My name is Jan Boyd, and I'm going to talk about Fibonacci and the golden ratio. As artists, we come across references to Fibonacci numbers and the golden mean or the golden ratio. What do they mean, and are they important to create accurate and beautiful representations of art? These concepts are quantifiable, identifiable, and fascinating. They can be found in the beauty of flowers, trees, sculptures, music, the human body, and more. Plato says, "The good, of course, is always beautiful, and the beautiful never lacks proportion." So how does proportion relate to Fibonacci and the golden mean? In appreciating the beauty of nature, of art, and of architecture, we can discern a common principle, the universal experience of pleasant proportions. We can easily identify good and poor proportion. Chicken to man, pretty off, out of proportion. Michelangelo's hands of God and Adam in proportion to each other, and we're more comfortable with that. We can recognize good proportion in a face, in architecture. This is the Parthenon, which I imagine everyone knows, and in art, a larger version of the other photo. All of these share the principle of the golden ratio, a formula that always reduces to close to 1 to 1.618. I'll go into this more in detail later, but let's look at the notion of this relationship you can see in the drawing in the photo we saw earlier. I'll point out the ratios here. 3 parts to 5 parts, that is 1 to 1.6. 5 parts to 8 parts is 1 to 1.6. 2 parts to 3 parts, again, 1 to 1.6. The head forms a golden rectangle with the eyes at its midpoint. The mouth and nose are each placed at golden sections of the distance between the eyes and the bottom of the chin. So you can see eyes to the nose, eyes to the chin. Again, look at it longer and you will understand the 1 to 1.6 ratio. In the turned face of Mona Lisa, note particularly the left side of the face to mid-nose in relation to mid-nose to the right side of the face. Again, the proportions of 1 to 1.6. The Parthenon, note the ratio of the roof tip to the top of the columns in relation to the top of the columns to the base of the building. This picture shows the use of golden mean calipers, a tool that can be used to measure the golden mean ratio of 1 to 1.618. And I have an example here. And you can put this on anything and see 1 to 1.6. So you can put it on your artwork or anything else and see the ratio. And these are pretty readily available. Again, here the calipers show how precisely the ratio is observed in Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam. Adam is 1, God is 1.6. I guess that would make sense. Here is another Michelangelo painting, and a pundit has inserted cartoon bubbles to help point out the clear existence of the ratio. I'll point right at the horizontal golden ratio so they can't miss it. I better point right at the vertical golden ratio so the skeptics can't say it's just a coincidence. So how does all of this golden ratio proportion information relate to Fibonacci? In the early 13th century, the Middle Ages were fading and the Renaissance was starting to appear. In Pisa, Italy, Leonardo Pisano was a brilliant mathematician. He wrote the book Liber Abaci, the Book of Calculating, in 1202, which argued the superiority of Arabic numerals over Roman numerals for the ease of commerce between the republics. In the same treatise, he posited what has become known as the first algebra word problem, the rabbit experiment. What would happen if a pair of rabbits were put into an enclosure to breed? How many pairs of rabbits will there be after a year if it is assumed that every month each pair produces one new pair, which begins to bear young 2 months after its own birth? So the answer, as you can see, is 377, but that wasn't the most interesting finding. What emerged was a number pattern, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, etc. It became the first written record of what became known centuries later as the Fibonacci sequence after Leonard Pissarro. His father was named Bonacci, so as the son of Bonacci, Filius Bonacci, Leonardo was commonly known as Fibonacci. So here we are at Fibonacci numbers. Here we find the relationship of 1 to 1.618, which I noted earlier as the golden ratio. So first look at this screen. The numbers are 0, 1, 1, 2, 3. Each numbers, starting with a combo of 0 plus 1, is the combination of the preceding two numbers. Each number divided by the one before it has a solution of approximately 1.618, or the golden mean. So it's both additive and division properties. So combining the two, here's the line that Plato charged his students to create. A line cut into unequal parts so that relationship of the whole to the longer part is equal to that of the longer to the shorter part. So AB is to AC as AC is to CB. This will take some time to look at and realize, but it's really interesting when you see it. And each of those divided out, 5 divided by 8 is 1.618. So again, we come up with those same numbers. With this basic understanding of Fibonacci and the golden mean, let's look at these concepts as they can be seen to create shapes. Here is a pentagram showing the internal Fibonacci relationships. Again, all of the numbers are Fibonacci, the 5, the 8, the 13, to create this perfect pentagram. Pentagrams can be seen in sea urchins, the carpels in a transversely cut apple, a sand dollar, a starfish. This shows the spiral created by taking each Fibonacci number on a graph created in a square of its number. So if you look at the smallest one, there's 1, 1, and then there's 2 by 2, 3 by 3, 5 by 5, 8 by 8, and so on. And if you connect those all, you get this logarithmic spiral, which I have on my shirt. Fibonacci spirals can be seen in the human ear, a nautilus shell, and many more places. And here are some more places where you can find them. A ram's horn, a seahorse, an ocean wave. You can see that logarithmic spiral in lots of different places. Now, note the piano keyboard. 13 keys in a complete octave, of which 8 are white, 5 black, which are divided in groups of 2 and 3. The Stradivarius violin, the scroll to the bottom of the body of the violin compared to the bottom of the violin body to the top of the body. Again, Fibonacci ratios. The human body has a fascinating number of Fibonacci relationships. The length of the face divided by the width of the face is 1.66 in this pretty much perfect face. The top of the head to the center of the pupil divided by the center of the pupil to the center of the lips, again 1.6. You can do all kinds of math with this face, and it all is Fibonacci numbers. Each section of the finger from the tip to the base of the wrist is larger than the preceding one by about the Fibonacci ratio of 1.618. The ratio between the forearm and the hand is the golden ratio. It's also interesting to note that we have 2 hands, each with 5 digits, and our 8 fingers are each comprised of 3 sections. Foot, the heel to the widest part of foot, divided by the top of the toes to the widest part of the foot, 1.6. Again, a number of things that you can actually see in this, the ratios. Human teeth. Note the use of calipers to see the relationship of the central incisor to the next smaller tooth and to the center of the teeth to the edge of the smile. Also the golden proportion of the width of the 2 front teeth to their height. The growth from child to adult presents an interesting surprise. A baby's navel, representing its past, is at its midpoint and its genitals at the golden point. But when fully grown, these reverse. An adult's midpoint is at the genitals, the future, with the navel approximating the golden section. It's interesting to note that due to its aesthetic qualities, golden ratios are used in many household items. Most credit cards are 86 millimeters by 55 millimeters, an 8:5 rectangle. Books, paper money, playing cards, doorways, windows, all approximate the golden ratio. We just like how it looks. So this is the second view of the golden rectangle, which we talked about before. So how does all of this relate to the work we as botanical artists observe and illustrate? Fibonacci numbers show up often in plants with multiple parts, leaves, sepals, petals, etc. An iris has 3 petals, flowering quince has 5, delphinium or aster has 8, ragwort 13, aster 21, and Michaelmas daisies have either 55 or 89. Internal growth patterns also exhibit Fibonacci numbers. A typical sunflower will exhibit 2 spirals of 21 or 34 clockwise and 34 or 55 counterclockwise spirals. Florets are packed into the tightest possible area, which will allow each to receive optimal nutrients and sunlight. Pine cones typically have 5 or 8 clockwise and 8 or 13 counterclockwise spirals in the bracts that grow out of the stem. And a typical pineapple has 8 clockwise and 13 counterclockwise spirals. Turning the pineapple, another spiral of 5 can be found. The growth in plants is dependent upon the availability of nutrients, moisture, sunlight, and air, and their growth is determined by how they can most efficiently receive all of these. External growth and phyllotaxis. Plants grow towards sunlight, growing in spirals as they reach for moisture, sunlight, and air, which are found to be available cyclically. As a branch grows, it generates leaves in fractions of a full turn, so that new leaves are not directly over early growth. These phyllotaxic ratios, growth at 5 stems in 2 cycles, or 8 stems in 3 cycles, for instance, are usually Fibonacci numbers as well. The picture on the left is 8 stems produced in 3 cycles, and the picture on the right is sneezewort growth, and you can see the 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8 process of that. So now that we understand the petals, inner growth patterns, external rotations, and phyllotaxis, there's one more very important aspect to consider as we create our illustrations: layout. So let's look at some historical botanical work. I believe that this hellebore illustration is close to perfect golden section proportions. According to my measurements, the height to the width is about 1.7, close enough. Placed at the visual edge of the largest flower to the width of the whole plant is 1.6. Placed at the top of the largest leaves to the height of the whole plant is 1.6. Also, there are 5 large leaves at the bottom, 5 small buds at the top, 2 larger flower heads, all Fibonacci numbers as well. Now, I hesitate to comment negatively on the historical print, but I'm going to. This one, I believe this illustration does not conform to the rules of the golden section and Fibonacci, and might be why it wouldn't be as appealing to look at. The height to the width is actually 1.6, so that's actually pretty good. But the proportion of the vertical sections is 2.2. The proportion of horizontal sections is 3. There are 4 large flowers at the top, 4 leaves, 4 larger elements across the bottom. Also, to my eye, and an attractive X at the virtual center, which has nothing to Fibonacci, but I wanted to point it out. So I don't think this one works as well, and that might be why it wouldn't be as appealing. So in conclusion, Fibonacci numbers in the golden ratio are found in many and varied disciplines and natural phenomena, from the dentist to the luthier, from the structure of the human face to the growth pattern of plants, from the anatomy of the human hand to the keyboard of the piano. While the value of knowing these concepts may now be manifest, it's also wise that they not be followed slavishly in our field of fine art. Perfect faces, if we all had them, would look robotic and unnatural. Flowers and plants certainly have strong tendencies to conform to these concepts, but their variations are what make them interesting and always fascinating. The best use of Fibonacci numbers in the golden mean in botanical illustration, in my opinion, would be to be mindful of them when creating or observing a piece of art, and very alert to how they might help your analysis if you create or view a piece of art that seems off somehow. A limit gives form to the limitless. Once your perceptive eye is introduced to these phenomena, it will be hard to unsee them anywhere. And this is Hokusai's Kanagawa wave. And that's it.